My name is Audrey Edmunds, and I currently reside in Minnesota. But 17 years ago this month, I was pregnant with my third daughter. We were currently in the process of moving to Minnesota. I had 2 children of my own. I had one other young gal that was 2 years old that I did daycare for part-time, and also an infant who was 7 months old at the time. Her name was Natalie, and she came to my house on a Monday morning. She was very fussy. She was always a fussy baby, but I tended to her and knew how to take care of her well and what she could and couldn't be around because she was very sensitive to many things. So it was a Monday morning, and she came to my house. Her mother brought her to my house around 7:15, and she was real fussy, and her mom said she'd been up crying twice during the night, and the previous Thursday she had taken her to the doctor and had her on an antibiotic for ear infection. So her mom stayed with her a while, and she continued to fuss, and I told her I'd feed her bottle because she had not taken her bottle that morning at home as she normally did. So as I was trying to feed Natalie her bottle and she continued to fuss, as I held her in my arms, I had 3 other kids at my table then also. And Natalie fussed, and it was time for me to get the other kids ready as I was meeting 2 neighbor moms with their kids, and we would walk our kids to a preschool that morning. This was a ritual we did. So I finally decided, since Natalie wasn't taking her bottle well, I would put her in a car seat in the master bedroom on the same level as the rest of us were in the house to try to help console her, and I thought maybe she would suck a little and fall asleep. So I gently put her into the master bedroom, went on in her car seat, propped up enough that I could prop a bottle under her. And about 20 minutes later, when I went in to get her to take her then on our walk with the other children, she was fussy just a tiny bit when I walked in the room. Her bottle was on the floor off to the side. I thought nothing of it at the time. I put her jacket on the floor, and as I started to put her second arm in, she had formula coming out of her mouth, out of her nose, I'm sorry. And at that point, I just instantly figured something was wrong, so I picked her up and I patted her, and I thought she would start crying, and I was getting no response, and it took me a few seconds to realize something was wrong with this infant. So holding her upright, I zipped through the house on foot, went into the front yard, screamed for one of my neighbor friends to come down. She came down. I started telling her what had happened, and she said, call 911. I was still holding Natalie upright. I took her into the house. I called 911. They told me what to do and how to give her CPR, so I did exactly what they were doing. A couple police officers soon arrived. Then the EMTs arrived. I had no clue. I thought it was my fault that she had choked, that something was terribly gone wrong because I had left her with this bottle. Well, as the day progressed, I went to the hospital late afternoon. I was unable to see the baby, but I did talk to her mother. I asked them to please keep me informed as to what the outcome was. I was expecting for her to get back to normal and be fine. Well, unfortunately, it didn't happen that way, and the next morning I had phone calls and visits from my pastor late morning to find out that Natalie had passed away that night. I went to the funeral of the baby on Thursday or Friday of that week. I had asked questions by investigators that week. Everybody told me that everything that they were putting me through, talking to me, was just normal for this type of an event. So I felt fine. I was very cooperative. I answered questions. I told them everything they needed to know. I showed them anything they had questions about. And this happened in October, and then in January I found out that they thought, due to retinal folds in her eyes and a subdural hematoma in her head, that was symptoms of shaken baby syndrome, and I was being charged of first-degree reckless homicide for the death of this child. In March then, the following year, I was charged. I was just devastated. I could not believe it. It was so foreign to me because I was a stay-at-home mom, did things with my church, my family, my friends. I was certainly not perfect, but I had no clue what the judicial system was going to throw at me. And then that following November, I went to trial, and after 8 days and a whole bunch of medical testimony and things that I couldn't even try to understand, I was found guilty of first-degree reckless homicide. That following February, 2 days after my youngest daughter's first birthday, I was sentenced in Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin, to 18 years of incarceration, 12 years maximum.
18 years?
That's correct, which would have been 12 years maximum at the time because truth in sentencing wasn't in place at the time. So I was handcuffed, taken off to the county jail. I did one night there, totally a blur as to what in the world was going on with my life, petrified, scared. The next day, I was fortunate, I find in hindsight, to go right to the state penitentiary in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and I had no clue where that was, what was going on. And then my life in a very cold hellhole started, as I did 3 years in the maximum building, and then I did 6 more years in a medium building at the maximum facility, and my last 2.5 years I did at a minimum facility. During these times, I went right to the District Court of Appeals with an appellate attorney. Our attempts at a new trial there did not succeed. Then we went on to the District Court of Appeals. That did not succeed. We went on to the state and federal levels. We were not successful in any of those. And while I was working with my attorney on the federal appeal, I was contacted by the Innocence Project at UW-Madison, Wisconsin Law School, as they had heard about my case from a neurologist at the University of Madison Hospital, and he told them that this was wrongfully diagnosed. So after my federal appeal did not bring me relief, that is when the Innocence Project in Madison started working on my case, compiling an abundant wealth of information, many doctors with new medical evidence, a change of evidence, a change of opinion, and based on new medical and scientific evidence that brought me to January and February of 2007 when we were able to present our new medical evidence. But at that time, I had to go back in front of the trial judge. He did not grant me a new trial. I was devastated. We went on to the District Court of Appeals. Everything was filed with them between us and the prosecution by December of 2007. And in January of 2008, I found out that I was granted relief, a new trial, and I was released in the first week of February of 2008. Yes, but I did 11 years then, and very, very grateful that it was out. And then after different contemplations between us and the prosecution that July, the case was dismissed, the charge was dropped, and I was exonerated due to medical and scientific evidence. Yes.
Here's the thing. I mean, I think sometimes they're worried about lawsuits or something. I mean, I have met Audrey. She is one of the nicest people I've ever met. Someone that wouldn't hurt a fly. I still can't believe how you came out of this with no anger.
Well, it's not always easy. My frustration is that the prosecution still does not want to admit that the medical and scientific evidence does not hold up their original charge. But I can't be angry. I'm so fortunate for the great steps that are being taken in the legal, medical, and scientific communities to show more and more progress that shaken baby syndrome, we don't even know if it exists right now. The original doctor that put this together in 1971 came forth last June of 2011 and said that the triad of symptoms that he swore upon in 1971 no longer hold true because of new medical and scientific evidence. And that is just great progress. And that's what I have to keep focused on. It wasn't easy being in prison. You know that, Allison. It's a very, very tough situation. And being a mom from those many miles away from my children, I was 4.5 and 5 hours away.
Oh, my God.
And it was a very different lifestyle for me then, and you just had to keep moving forward. And I was always very thankful. I always had legal representation helping me, and I continued to hope. And as it moved along and more new medical factors and information came through, it helped. But it just takes the judges to stand against political action and do what's right to implement the truth in these cases. And that's what was so devastating in hindsight. They didn't want truth. They wanted blame, as they do in many cases that we see with exonerees. We see that in so many cases with exonerees. And I speak for myself and everybody else that we've met and those that I haven't met. We've all had some really tough trials, and thankfully the victory has happened.
I don't even think they're worried about lawsuits. I think they're just worried about money, power, and control. Because I wouldn't sue. I just want to be free. You know what, Audrey? I want my life back.
Yes.
You know?
Well, we can't go backwards, that's for sure, but we certainly don't want to have this hovering over us anymore. And I don't know if it's about lawsuits. Many states have some real good compensation programs and laws for this. Unfortunately, Wisconsin doesn't have much right now. They're working on one that would be retroactive. And I said it's not all about money. It's just that getting more and more people to have to thoroughly investigate cases like mine, yours, many of these other cases where we've seen wrongful convictions happen that have just been slopped together and not done correctly. And I think that's where there has to be more accountability with these people that can just not even do their job truthfully, but just do it for blame. And that's just not right in any job, let alone those that are affecting our lives so dramatically.
The Innocence Project is one of the best things that ever happened in my life.
Yeah, they're wonderful, like all over the country.
Ziva, I will name Bill Clutter is awesome in Illinois. Mm-hmm. I have to name a couple names. Going to the conventions, Julie Ray Harper is one. And it just doesn't happen to be DNA.
Right.
Ron Ziney, yes, he's one of my very good friends.
Good.
And I mean, it's some people get off after 35 years from DNA.
Yes. Oh, my heart just breaks for some of these people that have put in double plus my time. And it was brought up. I don't recall if you were at the recent convention in Kansas City last March, and it was stated then that non-DNA cases now are almost as high, almost 50% as are the regular DNA cases. Medical and scientific cases with new evidence are almost as high now as DNA, which is wonderful.
47%.
Yes, that the courts are seeing these, that they're recognizing these things.
I wrote that down.
Very, very good. Mm-hmm. Yep. That is terrific news. So there's a lot of hope for others, and my heart goes out to in any other wrongfully convicted people. They say that the prison system is 10% at least not guilty people, and that just crushes my heart because we know we've been there, and it's very, very hard.
And, I read articles, and I go to P.F. Chang's, and I see 45 cops eating at P.F. Chang's.
Oh, gosh.
In Phoenix, Arizona, on Sheriff Joe's bill.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, huh? That's like $45, $45 times 45 cops. It's not Dunkin' Donuts anymore.
Right.
It's
Audrey,
money.
Audrey, what I really admire about you is that, somebody's been through such a horrible experience and has gone back and helped other people, got on with their lives, got on with your life, and I find that very inspiring. How do you manage to do that? Do you have any advice for somebody that clearly that many people who have been exonerated are in a terrible fit of depression right now? What did you do to get back on your feet?
I have to keep my faith. I have to look at the good side and be thankful that I'm out, I'm not on paper, that I have a lot of great support, and I look at the support and the progress that's being taken in not just shaken baby cases, but many other wrongful convictions, that more and more legal people and authorities are moving forward and seeing these things are wrong. There's more accountability. There still has to be a lot. And it's not easy. I don't have a house to live in. I don't live with my children. There's a lot of things that have changed drastically in my life, and it can be pretty tough, but I have to try to look at the bright side of things and not let it destroy you, because as in any types of tough situations, the loss of a loved one, an accident, somebody getting a devastating illness, whatever it may be, it can destroy you if you let it, and I don't want it to. But yes, it's been a big change in my life, that's for sure.
Audrey, I got to ask you a question. People, Americans, think that when you're wrongfully accused, you walk out of prison, and you're innocent, exonerated, expunged, you automatically get like $30 million from the government, and we don't.
Not at all. I paid over $100,000 for attorney fees and other fees. And, I mean, it's a priceless. It's not all about money, but it is incorrect that many of us have not been compensated to help us get our feet on the ground. We've lost our home value. We've lost our pension. We've lost job status. We've lost family. Granted, those things aren't replaceable with money, but something to help us have a comfortable lifestyle is not asking too much, because we didn't choose to let this happen to us. We were framed, and that's what happened.
Yep, and
framed and blamed.
That's why we don't get angry. And people like Laura Caldwell that writes books.
Oh, she's wonderful.
David, I told you I'd bring Laura up.
Wonderful.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
Bill Clutter.
Yes.
Ziva. And there's many others in the Innocent Project that I will, they can't give money out. They work for free too.
Yeah, they do a lot of work, and thankfully more and more are getting decent-sized grants to keep them going. And then a lot of them have students on staff, and I don't know if they're paid much, but what great experience for them. The students that worked with me over the 4.5 years were just wonderful. And I think it's a great opportunity for them. And, these kids, all these people just have their hearts in it for truth and righteousness. And that's what the blessing is. We're not being defeated. We're not just a small 2% cause in this world. It's getting bigger and bigger. And thankfully, there is more and more attention being given to wrongfully convicted people.
It's $6,000 per arrest, per false arrest. And they can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want.
Yeah, isn't that sad?
Well, Heather Kirkwood is an attorney, and she has specialized in addressing shaken baby syndrome, which means she's kind of stretched her abilities, because trained in law, and she's had to learn quite a bit about medical science. And you've defended a number of women that have been jailed. In fact, we interviewed one last week. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to this conclusion? Because I understand at the beginning you felt very differently about it, that you assumed that most of the people that were accused of shaken baby syndrome were probably child abusers, and over a period of time it looks like your paradigm has turned completely upside down. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, well, actually, I'm not a criminal lawyer. I was an antitrust lawyer, RICO, securities fraud, things like that. My daughter-in-law's brother had been convicted of, actually, it was a sexual assault case of raping his 3-year-old daughter. And my daughter-in-law asked me to look at it, and I said, well, there's only 2 ways to go here. Either he's innocent, as they felt, in which case he should rejoin the family, or he's guilty, in which case we need to keep our children far away. He was on probation rather than in prison. So I did that case and learned a great deal about the criminal justice system. I basically sent the materials out to people on both sides of the issue and got all of the reports back, or I didn't have them write reports, I spoke with them, but the conclusion was that he was innocent, but actually the evidence that was used to convict him established his innocence rather than his guilt. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I did get that conviction overturned, and I resumed my commercial work until the same daughter-in-law came up with another case.
Perhaps we should interview him on another show.
Pardon? Yes.
Right. Your son-in-law, was it, or brother-in-law? Your brother-in-law.
It was my daughter-in-law's brother.
Okay.
So she came up with another case. She didn't know the person, but a number of people in Amarillo felt that he was innocent. Oh, my heavens, that's my phone, sorry. Anyways, a number of people thought that he was innocent, and she wondered if I would take a look at it. Other people had asked also to have me help. She'd always said no. I looked at that case, a summary of the research basis for shaken baby syndrome, so I could take my autopsy report and compare that to the research-based findings in shaken baby syndrome. He took 3 months to do it. I was furious. I thought it should take 3 weeks. But at the end of 3 months, he turned over a large pile of material to me and said, there is no research basis for shaken baby syndrome. And my response was $100,000 on an Oxford education, and he can't find the research basis for shaken baby syndrome. I want my money back. But in any event, I redid the work. I walked down the same path that he had walked down, and I reached the same conclusion. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means that there's no research basis for it. There are lots of things that may exist, but there's no research basis to support them. So that was a predicament in which I found myself. I had a case in which I had hoped that I could simply play concentration, basically, look at the research basis, look at the autopsy report. Does it match? Does it not match? And that was not what I found myself in. So that was the Ernie Lopez case. That was on Frontline maybe a year or so ago. And he is out now, although they're still planning to retry him. So I don't know where they're going to go on that or what's going to happen next.
Well, that must have been a big shock for you when you went from a field of law where essentially the law is the law, securities exchange and in corporate law and that sort of thing, and probably not stating this correctly, but then to suddenly go into criminal law where you find that, in fact, often things are not done the way you would think they would be done. There seems to be a denial of due process. There seems to be times when the defendant is not allowed discovery, when expert witnesses are not allowed in the defense's case. That really changes your paradigm, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I went in thinking that the prosecutors would be interested in learning new information because I was essentially an antitrust prosecutor. I was a senior attorney for the Federal Trade Commission. I was a lead attorney on the Bestseller case and other cases. So I was always happy to receive new information because your only job as a prosecutor is to get it right. There's no other job. That's your responsibility. So I was surprised in this area that there doesn't always seem to be that same sense of getting it right and that your obligation is to the taxpayers.
That's sad, isn't it?
It is very sad.
How can we get our courts back? How can we get the prosecutors and the judges and and the court officials to honor their oath of office. After all, they took an oath of office. They raised their hand and they said, "I swear I will uphold the Constitution. I will defend your constitutional rights." Whatever happened to that? Where is their loyalties now? It seems to be in increasing their prosecution ratio. You often hear of prosecutors bragging that they have a 98% prosecution rate. There seems to be a lot of
I hope that
competition there.
I hope that means that they are choosing their cases well. It could mean that. I don't know where you begin. There are certainly really good prosecutors. I sat down with a prosecutor down in Pierce County, actually, and explained the case to him, and he went in and did a better job arguing for the woman who was accused than her own attorney did. He was very interested in the material. So there are some. We had an excellent one here in Seattle for quite a while, Norm Mailing, whom everybody misses. So there are good prosecutors. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they are elected, that so many, or they see themselves as the good guys versus the bad guys, and they have trouble differentiating between good guys and bad guys. I really don't know. I do think, though, that discovery is a very major issue. We have very good rules, the Brady rules, for turning over exculpatory information, but there are very few punishments for not following those rules. I think that's a problem.
What kind of punishments do you think would be appropriate if Brady rules are not followed?
I personally think civil rights suits, 1983. I've only brought one 1983, and I actually did try to include the prosecutor in that after I learned that they had received exculpatory information and had withheld it. And that was denied. It's still an appealable issue, but I think it would make them sit up and take notice.
Yeah, funny how that seems to happen way too often. I think you're absolutely right. I think if there were a few prosecutors or a few judges that were actually prosecuted, then that would send a very strong signal to the legal community, would it not?
One of my cases was a warfarin overdose. They were accused of murdering their daughter. It was, in fact, a warfarin dose, a prescription error. And I know that I asked the warfarin expert, I said, well, I don't, is this new information? Was this not known, that warfarin was as dangerous? And she said, oh, no, it's been known since the 1920s. And I said, well, why is it suddenly getting a black box warning? Why are there all these warnings out there now? And she said, oh, I hate to say it, but it's lawsuits. That's what changed things. And I don't like lawsuits particularly. I'm not litigious myself. I rarely file suits, but sometimes it does seem to be what makes things happen.
Mm-hmm. But the court officials, the judges and the prosecutors, seem to be essentially insulated from any consequence from their wrongdoing. In my view, there is such thing as natural law, and under any system of natural law, whether it was from ancient Ireland or from Africa, if somebody is wealthy and powerful and they have great benefit from their position and they have a great, and they also have the ability to harm people in a significant way. If somebody like that abuses their power and harm somebody, then their punishment is twice what some poor insignificant individual who sells marijuana on the street or whatever. In this world, it's completely turned upside down. It is the helpless ones that end up getting prosecuted and serving long sentences, and the ones that are powerful and wealthy that seem to be completely insulated from the results of their actions.
I can't disagree on many counts.
Well,
okay.
Can I just step in for a second? Like the nice Audrey's, or say myself, when you're wrongfully arrested, wrongfully accused, it triggers off on family members. And costs taxpayers so much money. Not millions. It goes into more than millions. And kids are affected. Children are affected. And this is intentional effect of torts. This is not right.
That's right. It seems to affect virtually everybody. I mean, who has not been touched by
friends, family, people lose
Exactly.
houses. I think Audrey mentioned a really good point. She lost her house. She lost her family over something that she did not do. Some of us are victims of a bad cop, a bad, I have proof, dispatch. In a very different case, I fought. I went to the media and won. Totally different case. We have to fight the prosecutors like Terry L. Clark, Judge McVeigh, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, that puts people in tents at 143 degrees in Tent City. That's sick. It's county jail. And I'll get my 2 cents in. It's 0 degrees in the winter. Do you know how many people die waiting for medical attention? I mean, they're not even, they haven't seen a judge yet. They might have run a yellow light. The hearing judge lets them go. This Arizona, Phoenix, and at least Arnold Schwarzenegger got rid of the tents because of a flood. We need to get rid of Tent City in Phoenix, Arizona. Does anyone have a comment on Sheriff Joe Arpaio?
Well, we do have Dave Scheid that is waiting in the wings, and he does have a pretty extraordinary story to tell. We have some great guests today, so I hate to interrupt either one of our guests, but well, let's hear from Dave. Dave, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Let me introduce you. Dave Scheid is he's a former school teacher. He was a Hollywood stuntman. He is a martial artist. He's also one of the founders of the Roger Sherman Institute. He just finished his master's degree in internet education and is now working on his PhD. And he has quite an extraordinary story to tell. I don't know of anybody else in America that has been arrested for court watching. Dave had a dispute with a judge, and it was over a traffic violation. And Dave pursued it, and I believe sued that judge. And later, he was sitting in the courtroom for a totally non-related incident in which he was acting as a witness, sitting in the peanut gallery as a spectator. When, as I understand it, Dave is about my age, so as you might imagine, our hearing is not as good as it used to be, and vision may not be quite as good as it used to be. But you heard a screeching from the judge to stand up, and he stood up, and then a screeching from the judge to sit down, and he sat down. And the next thing you know, he was being hauled away in handcuffs and put in jail. Literally put in jail for. I don't think we ever got any kind of a verdict or any kind of due process at all. And He spent 30 days in jail, much of it in solitary confinement, and there are a lot of legal questions about this incident. How did the judge get jurisdiction over somebody who was sitting in a public courtroom? What kind of due process is there? Do we have a right to habeas corpus? Dave, did I correctly tell your story? Please correct me if there's anything that I was inaccurate about.
Well, yeah, we'll cover a different subject next week. How about that? Okay. No.
Well, there's still a lot more that needs to be said.
Oh, I know, but it's really quite simple. When I'm in a courtroom and I'm not even opening my mouth, and I'm sitting there minding my own business, and all this was a matter of a judge recognizing who I was as being someone who had her in 4 different levels of Michigan courts, with evidence in all 4 of the courts showing that she's running a racketeering operation, and that she is corruptly keeping things off the record and manipulating things. And I had this and issuing fraudulent orders and things like this. She just spotted me. You were right. Basically, the way this thing was that quite a few people were starting to recognize that I'm an activist out here in Michigan, and that I did have this particular judge in 4 different courts, and including the Michigan Supreme Court. And there was somebody in the same township in Wayne County, Michigan, the Redford Township is the specific name of it. The court is the 17th District Court in Redford. The police are the Redford Township Police, and the judge is a judge by the name of Karen Khalil, Khalil, for the record.
How do you spell that, David?
Khalil, Khalil.
Korean?
And this,
okay.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I got it.
She's definitely not Asian descent, but there was somebody who called me up and said, "Hey, I understand that you've been dealing with this particular judge," and he said, "I have been harassed by the township police here. He was a homeowner. He had been arrested at one point, and after his release, he was being, I would say, as close to being stalked by the police as a person can get. He was trying to run a tow truck business, and they were harassing where he was parking his tow truck, and they were trying to get him for operating a business without a license, when all he's doing is parking his tow truck there, and then he built a fence and didn't pull a permit on it because it was his property, and he didn't think that he needed to do that, and so he was being cited, and he was going in front of this particular judge on a city ordinance violation, and he asked me and about 5 others to be in the courtroom watching what was going on. So I agreed, and so did the other people. And we went in there, and as David said, over the course of about an hour, hour and a half, that I was sitting in that courtroom, I got up twice, and the second time I got up and came back into the courtroom from using the restroom, I noticed that her eyes were following me and watching me sit down. It wasn't too long after that she had called the other guy, didn't call his case, but when he got up, like he was going to go use the restroom, she had the bailiffs go pluck him out of the pew and put him into the jury box. And that jury box is where we had, everybody that was sitting in the courtroom had earlier seen where she stationed a guy who couldn't pay his bail or his bond or whatever it was. He couldn't pay it, and so she had the bailiffs put that guy into the jury box, and we later saw him handcuffed and taken out of the courtroom. Well, here this guy is that is on a city ordinance violation, and he gets up to starts heading for the back door to go use the restroom, and she has the bailiff pluck this guy out of the pew without calling his case and put him into the jury box. Well, he's all confused and he's not knowing what to do, and he's standing up in the jury box, and when they're doing that, and there's this ruckus that's going on because the he's trying to say, what am I doing here? What are you doing this for? And the judge starts screaming at him. The bailiff starts screaming at him, and then they come. Then the next, and I'm writing down notes. I'm looking down at my paper, and I'm writing down notes. And the next thing I know, the person that's next to me, who's also a court watcher, nudges me in the side. And I look up, and I've got a bailiff with his hand on his gun, and he's pointing at me and screaming for me to stand up. So I put down my pad and my pen, and I stand up. And the next thing I hear is the shout of the judge, a big old shriek, telling me, shouting, "Sit down." So I sat back down again, and I started writing some more. Well, the next thing I knew, what had actually happened that I didn't know that had happened was that the judge was actually screaming at the guy in the jury box to sit down, not to me. But, this judge had created so much havoc in this courtroom that nobody knew what was going on. And so so I start writing again, and the next thing I know, the bailiffs are back in front of me screaming for me to stand up again. So when I stand up, they apparently she had asked in this confusion here what my name was. Well, whether I heard her or not, which I didn't, but even if I had heard her, I have the First Amendment right to say whatever I want or not say anything. And in this particular case, I didn't hear her, and I didn't say anything. And she claimed that she was that it was a contempt. She said contempt of court, and had her bailiffs take me out of there. Well, I didn't even hear the contempt of court part. All I knew was that I was being taken out in handcuffs, and long story short, I was kind of roughed up a little bit on the way from the courthouse over to just a little across this driveway over to the police station, and by this big old guy. I asked this Redford police officer what his name was. He's big, and he said, "Mr. Officer Strong." So even if you're trying to just be reasonable and ask in your own mind what's going on here, these people are giving you fraudulent information if they give you any information at all. Well,
the chilling thing about this is, do we not have a right to a public hearing? Clearly, if someone can be arrested for attending a public hearing, then we no longer have that right.
Well, exactly.
These are secret hearings, and apparently it's illegal to sit in the courtroom at this point. That is terrifying.
Well, and it gets worse because what's going on behind the scene is that this judge assigned a case number to my arrest that was the other guy's city ordinance violation case number. Now that was not even supposed to be. I forgot to include. That was not even supposed to be a formal hearing. It was an informal hearing. So they assigned his case number to my arrest, and they said that I was going to be going to Clinton County Jail. They were sending me out of the county to some other county to this jail. That's what the paperwork said. We got over to that county, and then they said, "No, you're not going here. You're going over to Midland County." No paperwork said I was going to Midland County. They sent me over to Midland County jail.
And there were some people who were actually looking for you and unable to find you because they were told you were in a different county.
Exactly. So I'm freaking out as I'm going into the Midland County Jail, just knowing nobody knows where I'm at. I mean, this is how fast somebody can vanish under the national authorization. What is it? Defendant NAD. What is it? NDAA, yeah, and a National Defense Authorization Act. This is how fast somebody can disappear. Well, so these other people.
Well, at least you didn't end up in Guantanamo and being tortured. So count your blessings.
Once I exited the courtroom with this officer, the judge ended up committing terrorism on the rest of the people. She had the door barred. There was another one of us that got up from the seat, and he was starting to head for the back door because he didn't want to have any part of this stuff. They stopped him, grabbed him, put their hands on him, and forced him back to his seat. And so, you know, it wasn't just me that they you know, put their hands on in any way. And this judge interrogated had everybody stand up that had anything to do with this case. There was other people standing up because they were so terrified. They just knew somebody's standing up, I better stand up because they're all hell breaking loose here. And I just saw a guy, you know, get taken out. And so she created terror on the other people there and wanted to know who I was, and they wanted to know who they were, and under threat that if they didn't talk, which they, again, this is their First Amendment right to speak or not speak, and they're in the pew, and they're minding their own business, and she's conducting terror on each one of these people. These are in affidavits. I've got them in affidavits right now, and if there is any attorneys that are ever listening to this, I am looking for an attorney. I haven't found one in the last 3 months since this occurred. So when I got to the jail, there was no paperwork to follow me. There was somebody else that was asking for it. They were asking for transcripts. They were asking for videotapes. They were asking for a judgment order. They were asking for any kind of paperwork. This is back on the day that this occurred on June 6th. And to date, today, there is still no paperwork that has been found that has to do with this occurrence. They were telling this person that because this was an informal hearing, that there was no transcripts. They were saying that there was no videotape. Now, the question is, how can you be in contempt of court on an informal hearing if there's no transcript, you know, that there is no court? It's an informal hearing. So how can you be in contempt of court? Well, this is the catch-22 that they put me in. It's fraud is what it is. It's fraud on the court, and it constitutes abduction, criminal abduction, and false imprisonment. These are felonies.
Well, I hate to interrupt, but 30 days false imprisonment, that's times like $10,000 per day.
I think you're right. Actually, I think it's more than that because there was a federal case down in Florida. A guy was placed in. He was arrested for some traffic violation, and they took him to jail. And he said that he wanted to pay the bail. He did not want to go into a cage. He wanted to pay the bail right then and there. They went ahead and put him into a cage for 20 minutes, and he ended up with $25,000 for 20 minutes. So that's about $1,000 a minute.
You should get over
$30 million.
You should get over $100,000 against these police officers.
Well, maybe that's just the police officers. Then there's the judge.
Of course, to put this in perspective, what we're really saying is if you win $1 million, it's not going to come from the judge. It's going to come from us taxpayers.
The police officers is who you got to go after.
I think you're right. However, I'm finding out that on constitutional violations and a violation of the oath of office, a judge no longer has immunity, and that they aren't covered anymore by risk management, things like that. So, you know, it's a matter of, are you ever going to find a court that's going to allow the prosecution of the judge under these types of circumstances?
David Scheid, I met a guy 3 days in jail, and he was white, and they said he was black. He wasn't even in the same place at the same time. He won $30 grand, and he only spent 3 days in jail.
Yeah.
Because the police officers screwed up. 3 days in jail. So the police officers they're the ones you got to go after.
Well, there should be a wake-up call for the courts. These huge settlements that victims have had, should be sending a message to the court officials, but so far it doesn't seem to have the right effect.
No, and it did get worse because once I got to the Midland County Jail, there's a couple of things that occurred there. One was that after going, I got put into solitary confinement, like Dave said, because what they shoved in front of my face at the very beginning was a contract. They wanted me to put my initials on this paragraph, put it on that paragraph, initial that one, turn the paper over, initial a couple more paragraphs, and sign it at the bottom. I recognized this as a contract. It all had to do with medical. And I didn't know it at the time, but my blood pressure was sky high. And they wanted me to sign all this stuff, saying that they had authorizing them to give me whatever medical coverage they thought that I needed, and then paragraph 2 or 3 was that they could bill me later for anything that they did, and the last paragraph was that I was refusing everything, and I said, well, wait a second here, I recognize this is a contract and I started asking some questions, and the sheriff deputy that's sitting at the counter said, I can't answer those questions because this is a third-party agency that's doing the medical. It's not the sheriff that's doing the medical. Nowhere on this form was the name of this agency. I got put into solitary confinement because I was asking for the name of the agency, and I started writing my own contract with them saying, I'm not refusing service. I will ask for the service on an as-needed basis, and I'm not going to have you dictate a contract to me. And so they put me in solitary confinement for that. Throughout the whole month that I was incarcerated, I was asking in writing the name of this medical agency that was performing these blood pressure checks and all this kind of stuff. They were feeding me peanut butter when I told them going in that I was allergic to peanuts.
I can testify to that, too. I saw Dave eat a peanut butter cookie one time, and it was pretty entertaining. He started swelling up and turning into the Incredible Hulk.
You know what?
That is
not,
it's a serious condition.
Funny.
No, it's not funny, and I didn't mean this at all.
It is not funny at all because I'm
could
moving.
Kill people.
Yes.
I'm moving, and I'm allergic to penicillin. And darn it, I saved the penicillin I'm allergic to only 2 times. And people laugh. They go, oh, that's really funny. And they laugh in the meeting. Oh, he's just saying he's allergic to peanut butter. My nephews are allergic to peanuts. But you know what? I believe you. You break out in hives. And there's so many people. They don't serve them on airplanes. And you just got to believe people. There's no medical attention in jail, even if you're innocent, in county jail. We got to stop it.
Well, I for the 30 days, I was asking for the name of this company, and I was never given it. And in fact, I got out of solitary confinement after about 10 days. They let me into the so-called general population for about a week, and I was still making issue in writing with grievances. I tried filing a writ of habeas corpus, and I wanted to see a judge. I tried to do it all in the nice formal way through a request form. I also had a crime report because I was reporting crimes, and I wanted to see a prosecutor to turn this stuff in. And because I was doing that, and I escalated it from a request form to a grievance form, when they denied, they said, we aren't going to let you see a judge. We aren't going to let you see a prosecutor. Take your stuff back. I said, well, wait a second,
Well, at least they didn't beat you. Other people have been beaten until they find they've signed these forms.
He took me in the hallway and was.
You really got just a mild dose of what it's really like to be in jail. And there are people who have been guests on our show that can tell much worse stories than that.
Yeah.
But we are getting near the end of the hour, and I'd like to thank our guests that have attended today, and also I'd like to.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
We're going to have this on my website.
Okay.
And I would like to have you on again.
You bet.
We're hoping to get a 5-day-a-week talk show. Nothing's ever been done on this. I have an in. I can't say right now. So we hope to have you on. I believe you. I've been there. Audrey's been there.
Yes.
We need to stop the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my closing statement. Dave Abrams knows, Audrey, Julie Bummer, the people we've had on our show. I think Dave Abrams can close the comment.
Sure. I'd like to thank everyone for being such a great guest. I'd like to thank Heather Kirkwood for your comments, and I'd like to have you on again. I know we've just scratched the surface, and I'd like to thank Audrey Edmunds for being on. And Audrey, if you're still on, do you have any closing comments?
I want to thank everybody who's recognizing and helping support with wrongful convictions. On a personal note, I have a book called I Tie It Up and It Happened to Audrey. It's being released October 24th, and that day I am very fortunate. I will be on the Katie Couric Show live in New York.
Wow.
That's a Wednesday.
Awesome.
And It Happened to Audrey right now is available for pre-order from Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. But thank you everybody for your support.
I hope it really raises consciousness out there, because there's so many people that have this.
Audrey?
The book? Well, let me finish, and then we'll let Audrey speak. But I hope that it raises consciousness, and I hope that people begin to realize that it's not just unsavory people that they don't want to ever see again that are put in prison. It's nice suburban moms like Audrey. It's people like Alison. It can happen to anybody, and that's not to say that because you might have tattoos on your bodies and you may be big and scary looking. That's no reason to put somebody in jail either.
Exactly.
But there seems to be perception out there that so what if somebody gets put in jail and they're innocent? They probably did something. Well,
Audrey,
in this case, absolutely not.
Repeat your movie again, or your book.
The book is titled It Happened to Audrey. It's available to pre-order on Amazon.com. But I will be live on Katie Couric on ABC on Wednesday, October 24th.
Wonderful. And Heather, do you have any closing comments?
No, just that I'm delighted.
Any bits of wisdom?
I'm delighted to hear Audrey about
my wisdom is Just because somebody is charged and you're all over the media doesn't mean it's been thoroughly investigated and done right. And I hope that people on juries will really listen to what is actually proven, not just what is acted upon in dramatic ways by the prosecution to try to get them to believe their story.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now. Thank you,
everybody, for being on our show.
Thank you. It was very nice. Appreciate the privilege.
David.
My pleasure.
Both David's things, and you know my website, www.backspinmymovie.com. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.